with the evacuation procedure, which A, I haven't got it in front of me, but B, I think because no members of the public, I think we're all well versed if there's if the signal alarm goes, go out to the car park and go to wherever you went to. Happy days. Second item on the agenda is apologies for absence. Members away on official council business. We've got apologies from Councillor Riley and substitute Councillor Andy Jens, and we've also got apologies from Councillor Hayden Phillips, but I haven't got a substitute.
No, he just came unwell today.
Okay, thank you. Item number 3 is disclosable pecuniary and non-pecuniary interests. None. Item number 4, public participation.
No questions.
Item number 5, the minutes of the meeting of the board held on the 16th of July this year. Are you moving? Thank you, Councillor. Moved by Councillor Simmons, Simpson even, seconded by.
He's the one with the bigger glasses.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Ridley. Thank you. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. Item number 6 is the close down update for the 2024-25. The report provides members with an update on the position with regard to the close down of the 2024-25 accounts. Members will be aware from previous reports of the issues relating to accounts and external audits across the country. Officers have been working with our new external auditors, AZETS, in order to meet the February 26th backstop date for the 2024-25 accounts. Everybody keeping up so far? Due to issues relating to resolving the 2023-24 and certain issues with the implementation of the new Unit 4 finance system, members are advised that the 2024-25 accounts will now not be published until the end of October, and the formal notice to this effect has been published on our website. This should still allow us sufficient time to meet the February deadline, albeit members will be aware that audits will continue to be disclaimed for some time for the reasons set out in the report. Along with an audit plan for the 2024-25 Executive Board, will also receive the annual audit report, which is the council's value for money assessment. So it's not ideal, but it's not, you know, we're not in a unique position by any stretch of the imagination. And indeed, there are some local authorities that are in an even worse position than North Warwickshire. So, you know, this is all about drawing the line in the sand. You know, we made the point, or I made the point when I first met with the auditors. You know, the bottom line is there has to be a line in the sand drawn, because and this is the national guidance for auditors of local authorities, because they, quite rightly, they're saying that because they have no confidence, or they can't have confidence in opening figures, therefore they have to disclaim. But there has to be a line drawn in the sand at some point, because otherwise you'll never be able to complete an audit if you've never got confidence. So this is where we are. Councillor Watson.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I kind of get all of that, and I understand that. But is it because, so you mentioned we're not unique, we're not, you know, other authorities are in a similar or same position. I guess the concern is if they've not changed their auditors and have had ongoing auditors, I guess they're in a better position, because in theory their auditors know their start point. I believe one of the challenges is our auditors weren't confident on our start point, so therefore couldn't declare the end point. But I guess the broader question is, if all 5 districts and boroughs are in this state, how on earth do you do LGR? I mean, how can you bring this lot together when nobody's certain? It just seems a really worrying situation. I'd be interested in the officers' kind of comments on that.
Well, thank you for your question, Councillor Watson. I couldn't possibly comment on the financial situation or states of our neighbouring authorities, except for District Council are well and truly in the mire, it would seem, with massive borrowings. Anyway, would you like to give perhaps a
No problem.
slightly more unbalanced?
With great difficulty is the answer. There are authorities who've been through the last LGR that are in precisely that position. One of the districts particularly had come in with 3 years at that point unsigned accounts because it was prior to the disclaimers and the current regime with the local build back. The new authority needed to go back and get those audits cleared before they could get their own audit done. And that was the focus that they were working on, and we were working on. I spent a bit of time there working. I think the difficulty is that there is no real recourse back to the original auditors. So we are now in the hands of AZETS, which is why we're working closely with them to try and get them to understand what I think we need. So the original discussions were, well, let's get 24/5 done. And my view is the things that we know is that the previous years have been done on a system that we'd had for years and nothing had really changed. So we should be able to get through those more quickly than 24/25, given some of the issues that we've got with the new system. 28/29 is the first year that they think we'll have undisclaimed accounts, and disclaimed is I don't really understand what it is trying to tell the reader of the accounts. For me, deferred is a far better word, because those years have been deferred. They've not been qualified. They've not been signed off. They are essentially deferred. What disclaimed tells the reader, I'm not entirely sure. So that's how I view them. I think we can get through the deferred years so that we all have true and fair opinions before going into LGR, but it's going to take a significant amount of work from the auditors as well as us together.
I think before I bring Councillor Simpson in, I think one of the most frustrating things, well, certainly for me, is that Ernst & Young I hold Ernst & Young entirely to blame for this. And the reason I say that is because, they will blame COVID, but primarily they overcommitted and under-resourced, because if you recall, PricewaterhouseCoopers, who they pulled out of local authority audits, Ernst & Young then tendered to take up that place in the market, with the assumption that a lot of PricewaterhouseCoopers employees would come over to them. That didn't happen. So ultimately, Ernst & Young, as I say, overcommitted and under-resourced because they don't have any resources. Plus the fact, certainly from the auditors that we had, the auditors from Ernst & Young, that we were arrogant and I'm trying to think of another polite word, but not very good, in my opinion. If you recall, there are a number of questions asked both at executive and at full council of that, and they refused to answer. And we draw our own conclusions from that, or I do. Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, Adam. I note that none of us really seem to know what disclaimed means. Do any of us really understand what backstop means? Because we've got backstop for 22/23 some time ago, and the same for 23/24. What is the position? Are they still disclaimed? Are they ever going to get to a position of being finalised? Through you, Chair. So the backstop is the latest date that the accounts for any particular year can be completed. That I understand. What I don't understand is, so what if they're not? What happens? Do they just fall into a void? Because again, they can't, because they can only ever be deferred. Because you can only get, and I think this is where the auditors have pushed back to the NAO and said, until we can establish what the opening balances are, and on previous years, we can never get an authority out of back to a true and fair opinion. So none of this can ever go away. And lots of authorities did lots of work to get opinions, disclaimed opinions, by the backstop date to essentially no end. And we're now still in the same position where we've got to go 21, 22, 22, 23, 23, 24, 24, 25. And
So it's meaningless.
Yeah.
And what is appalling, aside from everything, is that we're paying these people and they're telling us not only can they not do the past, they can't do this year, they can't do next year, and they can't do the year after that. I take my colleague's question on LGL seriously, because they're not going to get it done by the time the authority is abolished. It's hopeless.
it's definitely through you, Chair, definitely going to be a stretch. I think the working relationship we've built, and we've seen, I think, you mentioned yourself that the working relationship is much better. I've certainly seen that from the meetings that I've had with them. They've been put in a challenging position. I don't think there's any doubt, looking at what's happening with EY and Warwickshire, that all the things that you've just said are fair and are true. I warned right back when all of the money was being taken out of external audit that the people that would suffer would be authorities, and in particular 151s. So external and internal audit are 151's first line of defence. We work with them to understand that our control environment's in place to be able to come and sit in this environment and confidently say that yes, we've got true and fair opinions. The audit work that's been done is significant and sufficient, and collectively we're happy to sit and stand by the accounts. And the amount of savings that were lauded at the point when PSAA came in and redid all of the contracts has left us in a situation where I can't sit and say here, but even in authorities, my previous two authorities where true and fair opinions were being given, that the same significant level and sufficient audit is being done, because I don't think it is.
I'm sorry to ask for another definition, Chairman, but it seems like the Oxford English Dictionary has been thrown out the window. Could Mr. Sutton explain to me what challenging now means, if what they're saying is they can't do their job for the next 3 years? How unchallenging do you have to get to be challenging?
It is their job is to audit the in-year accounts. Now it's their job to audit 3 prior years accounts. So that's a new regime. The local build back is a new regime. But we will get some additional funding to pass on and pay to them to do the additional work that they're being required to do as part of local build back. Again, I'm not advocating. I'm just going back to the beginning of this, when decisions were taken because external audit was perceived to be too expensive at that point, to reduce those costs. I think things then happened through the NAO around particularly assets where significant more work was required, and that didn't match and meet with the contracts that had been put in place in the first place. And so it from the auditor's perspective, they're being asked to do more work with essentially the same money, and they're private sector. So all of them have gone, well, hang on a minute, this isn't working. You want us to put more time in, and we're beholden to contracts that are 2 years old. Because you've got a national agency through the NAO requiring them to do more work. And that's what's caused the pinch.
I understand that definition. That's what's called the private sector. You're expected to do more with less. That happens every day of the week.
I've got councillor Martin Watts.
Thanks. Well, no, it's right. 'Cause I like radical ideas. I like things. So as we just established, actually, they're going to do nothing meaningful for the next 3 years. Why don't we just not appoint them and not bother? Save the money, spend it on our residents rather than spending it on expensive auditors. Because actually, I get the point if they're going to do something meaningful. If they're going to come out with something and give us it. But it's not going to matter by the time this authority is abolished if LGR goes ahead. So the bit of me kind of goes, why?
Well, here's the thing.
No sanction.
Here's the thing, councillor Watson. It's such a cartel. We don't appoint them. We're told who we're going to audit. So I mean that's again, that's one of the most frustrating things about this whole process. That
So is the contract
local
with,
authorities aren't in control of who audits them anyway.
so is the contract actually with those who do the appointing?
Yeah,
Well, let them default their contract. They go, crack on. You signed a contract. Why'd you do that? I know it might sound a bit clear, but you know, it's very frustrating when we're spending public sector money on things that aren't going to actually add any value. To almost tick a box to give the National Audit Office a comfort fact that the stuff that actually doesn't matter because it's 3 years old. You know, what matters is our bank balance today, you know, the services we're providing to residents today, the cost of our organisation today, that's what matters. 3 years ago, it's past, it's done. It doesn't matter anymore.
Can I sort of ask a question myself, which is unusual? It might help members as a non-accountant. Will we be in a better position with this work? In other words, are the degrees of unqualified, of not unqualified, what was it? Displayed. In other words, will we get to a point where they start and say, well, yes, if the opening balances were right, which we can't verify, then the closing balance is right, and therefore we get to a vanishing point where or not.
It's a really good question. Something that I was talking about today. The answer is no.
That's not a question. It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant.
There are essentially two.
So we'll be deferred forever then.
Well, until they invented disclaimed, there was true and fair opinion, which is what we all seek, and qualified, which is pretty much 151 walks out the door apologising. And obviously nobody wants a qualified opinion, so you work until you get a true and fair opinion. And we've worked with auditors as 151s for years and years and years on getting to that point of true and fair opinions. And only in recent years have we had situations where that's simply not happened. And that's why the regime has brought in this new third leg, if you like, which is a disclaimed opinion. And I go back to me, it means nothing. The word itself doesn't mean anything. That they're all deferred because they're sitting there still waiting to be given a true and fair opinion. And I guess the only thing I would say is that it will mean a hell of a lot to the new authority to be in a position to be able to get true and fair opinion in its first closed down years.
That's kind of what. Yeah.
And that is something to work towards and strive for. That it's on our watch is unfortunate, but that's the same for all of us in Warwickshire and all of us who are in the same situation across the country, of which there are still many.
I've got councillor Stewart and then councillor Bowen.
It does seem that this is a complete exercise in futility, and the conversation also in some ways. Given that the recommendation to the board, and I will pass on this if Bobby has got something critical to say, is that I just say that we move, isn't the recommendation that we report, not the report, that we move straight to the vote. I'm not sure what extra scrutiny we can have at this point that would actually add in. Unless Margaret, unless you have a.
It's only slightly related to that. So going right back to what you said at the beginning, Paul, there seems to me there's two issues. One is the audit, which we've all expressed our frustration with. And the second is the systems, processes and expertise inside our organisation. And that is something we do have control over. And just reading a little bit between the lines on what you've said, some things were not as they should have been. And we need some assurance that they are getting to where they need to be.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Yeah, hit the nail on the head. Margaret, we can only control what we can control. So I'm in the process of bringing in 2 people actually. One who's got significant close down expertise, and somebody who's then going to work alongside us to work on the budget through this period. So what this does is it concertinas 2 quite big jobs for a finance team in a relatively small organisation into one. So February is when we set the budget. There's a lot of work that goes in ahead of setting the budget, and obviously if February is now the backstop date for closing the audit, then those 2 things are going to need to be done at the same time. So we are got somebody starting, or they're both starting next week, one Tuesday, one on Wednesday. So absolutely recognise that as an issue, and something that, again, we want to get upstream of now. You know, as I say, with the accounts, it's going to take us a bit of time to get upstream of it. There's quite a bit of work to do as far as the budget goes too, and again, want to get upstream of that through the medium-term strategy report. I mean, probably in November, but work, most of that will be done in October. So yeah, really good point.
Okay. I think we've had. Did you want to come back, Councillor?
Just to comment on what Councillor Stewart was saying, because I don't, in a sense, disagree. But it comes back to what you mean by noted. In my world, noted in this context means acquiesce. And I don't.
No, I don't agree with that. If I may. Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Look, there's an awful lot that could be said on this. There's lots of questions that have been raised, including the one that sort of appears to me is that if these people are put on our behalf, is that we have grounds to complain to that body that they've given us the one who can't do the job. And I think we could quite easily pass a motion that we complain now and next year and the year after that, thereby showing a level of efficiency that isn't being shown to us. I think as well, though, is that what strikes me is that if we have a figure that is now produced every year that says, if your starting figure was 0, your figure is now plus or minus X thousand, it at least allows us to know where we are in performance terms.
Absolutely.
And that, I think, is beneficial. And if that's what we get, where I am concerned and where I don't want to acquiesce, and I feel like we should do something about, you know, making some kind of fuss, is that I fear that we make that point with good intention, and in 12 months that we go and find ourselves in exactly the same situation. The point about local government reorganisation, I would hesitate to put that forward as a beneficial action as to why we should maintain the status quo.
Yeah, I mean, Chairman, I certainly agree with that. What I suppose in my heart I'm getting at is it's all very well to say you don't know the starting balance, but you can make a comment on the activity, that's I think you were saying, from that year. And what we seem to be in this situation here is saying, for the rest of this authority, we won't get to that place. It'll always be undisclaimed. And I get the point, there are only various categories of opinion that they're prepared to pass. But what, you know, I can understand there was a historic problem for whatever reason, you know. But what this is saying to us is, for the life of this authority, that problem will continue. And I'm asked to note there is nothing we can do about it. And I find that all but impossible to accept.
I've got Councillor Simmons, and then
Yeah, just really quickly, I know from what Councillor Stewart was just saying about if we had a 0 balance or if we're plus or minus, what we'll remind people is just because we're having a opinion that is disclaimed, not you know, true and fair, does not mean that on a monthly basis we're not producing our accounts and managing our finances. But it's the audit opinion we're lacking of that true and fair. And those internal processes and that cost control and all those things still happen. It isn't that the activity is in any way not occurring. I want to give people that assurance, because that can sound a little bit like, well, that, you know, we've got these very poor accounts that aren't telling us anything, and that we can't be assured that the external examination of those accounts is saying that we have to disclaim because we can't verify an open balance. And we have our activity that rolls and rolls and rolls month after month after month, that we have opening and closing balances of, and the activity that then generates that income and expenditure that is reviewed, that is monitored, and that is, in my view, you know, we are fairly stable and quite in control. It isn't that is the issue. The issue is the external examination. Let's just remember that in context before we sort of start, you know, being very concerned.
And just to add to that, we have 3 years that have been sat waiting for over 3 years to be audited, for somebody to come and do a full audit and draw a conclusion.
I've got Councillor Watson and then Councillor Ryrie.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And that's really good to hear, the fact that actually, from what I know as a profit and loss, so you know, we're actually running the organisation in an effective way. We're using our reserve, you know, revenue, etc., and controlling our costs as you would expect. So that's really positive. I guess what'd be interested for me is how often do we do that? Do we reconcile on a monthly basis? How often do we reconcile that with our actual bank balance? How often do we do those types of activity? But actually hearing all of that, for me, makes this activity even more futile. Just, you know, because we could choose to not do it. Because as I understand it, actually there's no penalty, or we don't get penalised for not doing this, I believe. I don't think there's anything, you know, if we're running the organisation and we're doing the day job, as it were, then this almost just seems yet almost a box ticking exercise. That we've got someone's opinion on our accounts. Do we care about that?
I mean, it's a statutory undertaking with statutory timescale, so we do have to do it. But it is a bit of a moot point, given that we're all working to non-statutory backstop dates, because most haven't met the statutory timescales.
Councillor Ryrie.
Yes, I'd just like some clarification. So if you're saying things are as they should be internally, it's just the external audit that isn't there. What does Councillor Bell mean by things haven't always been as they should be? I'm just a little bit, it seems a little bit contradictory, so maybe I've just missed something.
So within the external audit report that ASX did last year on the work that they managed to undertake, there was an acknowledgement that, or an assessment that the papers were, the presentation was late. The working papers weren't what they should have been and what they would have expected, and we didn't respond as quickly as we could. So they are, I mean, they are again key elements to the support that we should be giving to the external auditor in the undertaking of their duties. It is a two-way street. It isn't just, there you go, there's the stuff, go away and audit it. We work together on doing that, and that's the commitment I've given to ASX, that when they come in, we will have the right people to be able to provide them the information that they need. And it's usually quite an intense period, so 4 to 6 weeks, you know, where they'll come in. They won't come in because it's now all done online, but we don't have an office that they sit in anymore. I might hark back to every now and again. But the reality is that it's a 4 to 6 week period where we work together to get to the point where we can sign the accounts off with a true and fair opinion. But
could I also add that we had an IT system
Yes.
that wasn't fit for purpose or wasn't being used as it should have been,
correct.
and that's what I want assurance of as well.
So 2 things. The IT system was well beyond its use by date, and we have implemented a new one which is functional, but there are still issues that we are trying to resolve to enable us to be able to close down and publish the accounts for 24/5. So So absolutely, the month by month reporting is happening, but there are issues that we're still trying to resolve to close 24-25 down.
Can I suggest a couple of extra recommendations to help members with this? They're reporting the update, not endorsing the system. So the report be noted, but that we make representations to whichever would be the appropriate body, National Audit Office. It seems that ASETs aren't the problem, albeit we're not, because of the system, we're not getting what we might expect from ASETs. So that B, we write to the National Audit Office to express members' frustrations with the practical issues that are being caused by this. And then thirdly, that we have, if ASETs are amenable, an online briefing from ASETs for them to tell us, you know, what we'll benefit, what we'll benefit from in terms of having gone through that. So if that provides some level of assurance in terms of not just sitting back and going, well, crazy.
Yeah, it would be PSAA, the public sector audit appointments, limited.
Okay.
I also seem to remember in the distant past putting a recommendation in executive to ask for a refund or on some of the previous audit fees that where did we ever get to that? Because well, I hate to hark back, but Ernst and Young are very much to blame here. So we've had to pay them for something they haven't done, and in the real world, in that place called private sector, if you haven't had a piece of work done, you don't pay for it. And that's when, when I use the term cartel a few moments ago, that's what I mean. It is like a cartel because, it just doesn't happen in the real world. And that is my biggest frustration. It's 100 and, we were paying them 100, I can't remember, but over £100,000 a year for them to do nothing. Well, not nothing, but not an audit, which is why we're in the position we're in. And equally, in the real world, auditors and accountants change all the time. So so at a point in time, Ernst & Young did carry out an audit, albeit late. Therefore, the closing figures. So when now as that should be the starting point. They should have confidence in those figures because if they don't have confidence in those, when the last accounts were audited, if they don't have, they're saying they don't trust Ernst & Young, which may be a fair comment, but as I say, in the private sector, when we just accountants take up a new appointment, the first thing you get is, well, we want the closing figures from the previous accountant, and that's where you start with, and you have faith and trust in those figures, because otherwise you'd call it the whole profession, aren't you, at the end of the day? But so basically, can we add another recommendation? Chase, well, I want a refund, or not personally, we should be entitled to a refund for part of those fees. And if Ernst & Young aren't going to do it, so we want it off the PSA.
You can write to
Cartel Limited. That's just
Sometimes when you work in the private sector, you do the work and you still don't get paid, which is rather wrong. What I would ask is that if we are taking such an action, what's been noted in the reports or from the officers' reports is that we are not alone in this situation. Is that should we not be writing to other partner councils to say, this is our situation, this is what we're doing. Do you fancy doing the same as well? Because I often feel in situations such as this, if Ernst & Young or the PSA or the National Audit Office are Bruce Lee, the councils are the bad guys who seem to attack just one at a time and separately, thereby are more easily batted away rather than taking some kind of, and I hesitate to use the word with your subject, but some unionised action that may prove more effective.
It was going so well until.
I need to use that sort of language.
You should Risley or Union. Well, it seems to me there's a fourth recommendation then. One is to note, B is to make representation of PSA on the practical difficulties we're experiencing in this system, including the issue of cost and refund. Thirdly, liaise with other authorities around their experience and whether they, whether this wants to be raised, nationally. And the fourth one is a presentation from Azets then around what is the point, generally.
Okay, everybody clear on those recommendations? Well, I'll move them from the chair, seconded by councillor Simmons. All those in favour? And thank you very much. Item number 7 is the appointment to outside bodies, Sherborne Recycling Limited. So with the appointment of the new interim corporate director, Streetscape, the council needs to confirm its appointment to the board of Sherborne Recycling Limited. And so therefore asked to approve this appointment. Councillor Bell.
Yeah, I have to say, I'm a little disappointed with this report, particularly as my name's on there as having been consulted, which I haven't been. This is a really critical time for Sherborne. They've just had an external review done on their governance and generally the way they work, which is being reported but haven't yet seen the report. Now, Kath James did an excellent job of actually fighting our corner, as it were, with Sherborne, and she's brought about a number of changes in that organisation. There's still an awful lot to do. I was hoping for a soft handover on this one, where for the first meeting of directors, Kath would be there with Mike with her, and then Mike take over. So I was rather surprised to see this paper. I have since spoken to Mike, who's assured me that he'll be working with Sherborne to get the background and get the report early, and we will discuss it between us and come to a view. So I am willing to go along with the recommendation, but I wanted to make the point that, this is critical to us. They owe us money basically, and it's costing us money at the moment. We're not making money out of it, and we've really got to sort them out. They either change or we do something drastic. So I'm the shareholder representing you, all of us here, there, and I'm also the deputy chair of the shareholders meeting. I've asked for a meeting with the chair and myself and Sherborne to go through the report as well before the shareholders meeting, excuse me, which is in November. So
Can I just apologise to Councillor Bell in respect to that consultation, particularly as it mentions it, and that's my responsibility, and we'll shout them up on that to make sure that what is said is done. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you indicate?
Yeah.
Councillor Barnett, then,
Okay.
and then Councillor Simmons.
I haven't got an issue with the item on the agenda. I think it's more a complaint that this is the first that I was aware that the previous officer had left. And it's not the first time that we've had changes of senior officer. It's not really been properly communicated. We had a similar thing with the last section 151 officer. Well, I didn't know about it till after it happened, and we'd already appointed a new one. So can we just make sure that we communicate changes to senior officers promptly, please?
Well, I thought that. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yes, apology. Myself and Councillor Ryrie meet up from time to time. That was one of the things that was on that. We haven't been able to make those appointments the last 2 times. So yeah, apologies. That's broken down. But yeah.
Councillor Simmons.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I don't necessarily have an issue with it being an ex officio role. So obviously it's appointed as director of Streetscape. My question was really about, as we've got an interim person in the role at the moment, sorry, Mike, that whether or not, because the appointment to the board will be a permanent role, won't it? So what happens there? Is that all right? Is that okay? Is that a permanent appointment to the board? We've got an interim person in that position. So is that sort of? It would
change in the same way as it is now. So yeah, because obviously Kath was a interim that was on board. So yeah, the same process will follow if it needs to. Councillor Martin Watson.
Thank you, Chair. Sherborne, obviously, we've had a number of conversations about Sherborne, and I know Margaret's raised some concerns in the past, and we've raised concerns in the past. Where are we with the Sherborne executive as such? Because I know there were concerns about how Sherborne was run, wasn't it, and the appointments that were being made within the Sherborne senior leadership team, etc. And I've not heard any kind of words of comfort that's been resolved. So I'd just be interested to know what our view is on the Sherborne organisation.
That's the basis of the meetings that are coming up
Yeah.
with the shareholders and the directors, Councillor Watson. It's not a place.
But to be fair, I heard that 6 months ago.
Well, that's how long it's taken Sherborne to. Yeah, that's how long it's taken Sherborne to appoint somebody external to look into this. And now they're bringing the reports back, are they not?
I am one of the, I understand one of the, I haven't seen the report, but I understand one of the recommendations is an independent chair, which we desperately need,
Right.
and possibly non-exec directors.
Yes.
So that I haven't seen it, but I believe that'll be part of the recommendation. My concern is that, can I put this, the recommendations may well impact on the current executive, and therefore I want to make sure that the full report is seen.
We're hearing you, Councillor Bell. We're hearing you. Okay. Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, Chairman. It's a small point, but I think small points help to understand the nature of what we are. Can I ask, has a lawyer looked at Appendix A and said that it's appropriate? I don't mean looked at it now. It's what? I'm presuming by the lack of response, the answer is no.
I think the answer is I don't know. The lawyer sees these papers before they go out, and this is produced by Sherborne's lawyers. But we can.
And I don't think that's good enough, is it? If it's dealt with by Sherborne's lawyers, this is an appointment, if you like, that this council is making. And it's without legal opinion on it. And I ask that, Chairman, particularly because some of this is just not that. You know, condition 6, you agree that you will promptly return to the company board all papers and property of the company and any company subsidiary which are in possession. It's just ludicrous as a comment. It's not enforceable, and nor is it practical. The papers are for the information of this council's representative. To suggest that we give back all the documentation that our appointed representative has had is ludicrous. I'd like to understand the basis of the appointment, whether this is genuinely someone who is a director of that company, or they are a nominee director of this council. Is it an internal appointment, or if you like, is it an external appointment to the board? Because this applies, sorry, this implies to me the appointment is made as a director of that company and not as our representative. And there is, I think, a material difference.
That they are, under the law, they will become a director of this company, Sherborne. And we are nominating, you know, as a council, as a board, we're nominating that person to become our nomination to become a director. So they're being appointed to Sherborne Recycling Limited as a director.
As an outside director.
As an outside, yeah, absolutely. So they'll sit on that board, but it's our nomination for the person that sits on it.
Condition 6 does not.
Yeah, well, 6 is.
No, I agree. What difference they make?
Yeah,
because I can't.
yeah, absolutely.
But this is, you know, I think the devil is in the detail with all these things.
Yeah.
So I really, before anybody signs it or authorises anybody to do anything, I'd like the lawyer to look at it and tell us this is good enough.
we can perhaps look at number 6 and make it clear that this relates to the personal element of their employment, not the organisation, so we don't need it returning. It's returning to the authority.
And like, I understand, Joe, but my point is not just 6. I understand what 6 is saying. I don't necessarily understand all of the documentation because I haven't got all of the documentation. But if even I can see those, it's not quite right, really. Somebody look at it.
Okay. No. Well, the recommendation is to authorise the appointment and authorise the chief executive right to Sherborne to confirm that name appointment. So we're happy with that, subject to the lawyers looking at the agreement. Okay, so I'll move that from the chair, seconded by Councillor Bell. Those in favour? Thank you very much. Item number 8 is the Community Governance Review Caldicot. So members will recall that the council received a valid petition from residents in Caldicot asking us to consider the formation of a parish council. Receipt of the petition triggers a community governance review, and the council has undertaken a consultation with residents, including drop-in sessions. This has included residents in Caldicot and also in Hartshill, as some properties currently within Hartshill parish would need to move to the Caldicot parish. The results of the consultation and comments are set out in the report, with a majority in favour of the creation of a parish council for Caldicot. As set out in the report, a suggestion has been made during the consultation that the areas combine to create one parish council. Officers have confirmed with those who organised the petition that this would not be their preference. Members are asked to decide the next steps, some options for which are set out in paragraph 2.8 of the report. Councillor Clues.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just a bit not concerned, but hopefully something's already been said on 3.1, where it said the legal implications are set out in the report. There will be some staffing implications with consultation work being carried out by the colleagues from the Democratic Services, Communications and Forward Planning team. I hope somebody's had a word, especially with the Democratic Services and Communications and Forward Planning team, that they've got time to do all this with everything else that they already do. And I'm looking to Mr. Maxey for that assurance.
Yeah, so the burden, if I may, Chair, through you, the burden of this is through Democratic Services, and unfortunately, not similar to some other subjects we talked about this evening. Once a petition has been received, that triggered through whether we've got the time to do it or not, and that's particularly the case given that we've not had an election manager since June. We started today, so yes, it's we've had to do it in a proportionate way. Which is, let's say, mainly on Democratic Services.
Thank you. As the chair of Special Southern working with Kerry, this is one of the always concerns that our staff, they're always consulted and not just said, well, here you are, it's a bit more on your pile. Thank you, Chair.
I share your concerns, Councillor Clues, but as the Chief Executive just said, sometimes these things, they come to the boroughs because it's our hands are tight, we have to find the capacity to do it, it's and LGR is a prime example of that, the amount of officer, and member time it's taking, but we can't do anything about it. I mean, it's quite ludicrous, but there we go. Councillor Bell.
Thank you. Yeah, this is quite concerning me because I understand that most of the people in Caldicot want to have a parish council, and it's fine. But because of their size, they're having to take some houses from Hartshill. Those people in Hartshill, from what I can gather from the comments, don't feel that they're related to Caldicot in any way. They feel related to Hartshill. Now they're only a small number, so their voices will be lost in this. But yet it's very concerning. The parish council seem to be, pretty sanguine about it, to be honest, although it will mean they'll lose some money. But they're not that bothered. But those few people are concerned. Now and also in the paper, somebody puts forward a formal proposal that that in fact what happens is that Caldicot joins Hartsell Parish Council. Now, my question is, how is that going to be dealt with? That's a formal proposal. Have we got to go through the whole of this process as a proposal instead of, or in parallel with, Caldicot being separate?
Chair, for me on that, I was very careful in my response to that person because they said, please find attached a petition. And there wasn't a petition.
Oh, right.
It's a petition that triggers it into the formal process.
Right.
And so therefore, given that he or she can respond to my email in any way, shape or form, particularly not with a petition, it's merely a consultation response, not downgrading a consultation response, and it doesn't trigger that issue. The email from Hartsell Parish Council said, Hartsell Parish Council does not feel they would be able to absorb Caldicot into the parish of Hartsell and take on their issues as well as we have here. So that was part of my clarification once the report was done. So yeah, I think that encapsulates all the issues in terms of there's a number of people in Caldicot who have rightly triggered a community opinion governance review. Hartsell Parish Council, their email says, you know, we'll be happy for Caldicot Parish Council and support them if the original triggered positive response. But it's those issues of those people who are going from one to that,
Yeah.
if that's the route.
And as far as I know, there's no developments around Caldicot that would give them the right number.
No, that's right. And
There is
that's
actually,
now.
there's a possibility, there is actually a possibility of development, and that.
But it's
so-
a here and now thing rather than
So in the timescale of doing this, if Caldicot grows enough to be big enough, we could perhaps, I don't know how this is going to work.
I mean, sorry, through you, Chair, that is one of the options that we in getting the petition, we have to trigger a community government review. We don't have to accede to their request. And one of the things you could do is say, well, we'll leave it a year and see if Caldicot does go without these people having to come in. But members will have their view on the adequacy of that response. But it's an option. You can do something, nothing, or wait, as long as you responded to the petition.
Okay, Councillor Steve Watson.
Thank you. I'm not greatly familiar with Caldicot or Hartshill and the boundaries and things like that, and I don't have a real preference, Chair, as to whether this would be a great thing or not a great thing. I think what is alarming though, the 29 responses, it's almost a 60-40 split. So I hope somebody kind of has a look at this between the yes and no, whether they're supported, because 40% of people don't want to do that. That's quite a big number. That's not a landslide to make it happen of the complication, the costs, and the change. I hope there's somebody there. Sorry.
Well, I was just speaking as one of the 48%. That's all.
Oh, well, we're not talking about the 52-48, but yes, certainly 40%. I hope that somebody is bearing that in mind and considering that, because that's still a big number in my mind. That's all I wanted to say, but just share that now.
Thank you. Councillor Simpson.
Thank you. I'm sorry if I'm being a bit thick, but I'm not entirely clear on what the next steps are. I'm presuming that we're going to have a review of the consultation review, and someone will come up with a recommendation. Is that right? And if that is, who will be doing it?
So I think technically you've had your review because the review was the consultation and the drop in. To sort of complete that review, the council now decides what it's going to do. And it can say no, we don't want to create a Caldicot Parish Council. They can say yes, we do want to create a Caldicot Parish Council. Or they can say we want some information or assurance or event to happen or whatever. So not now. So which would in effect be in the no category. So we don't need to say yes. We just need to have considered it.
We could choose to disclaim
that from 2.8. So 2.8 in the report tells me that.
Yeah.
But B of the recommendation it sort of implies that there's something else going to happen.
But it wasn't intended to do that. But it's the whole review incorporates day one. Yes, with that petition, therefore the review has started to what is the council's formal response. So it's the next steps in this thing called a review, and our next steps are having gone out and done the consultation and the issues raised. What do you want to do? Yes, no, or something else.
And Chairman, I'm clearly not a Hartshill Caldicot member, not being guided by those that are. But I am genuinely conscious of the fact it's 60-40, there seem to be unanswered questions. So I'm in the do something else category, which is trying to gain consensus, I think, because I think having read all this, it didn't strike me there was a slam dunk answer. So I don't honestly at the minute feel like I could genuinely make a decision of any of the options other than 2.8. Because I've got, I just don't feel like I'm in the situation where I can understand it sufficiently to say, do we go for parish council? Do we look at expanding Hartshill or not? Because some sort of swap analysis would help me. Because I would have thought Caldicott, I think at the minute has a parish meeting like Packington does. If we were to put them into the parish of Hartshill, then they'd be in a different situation. And we have other parishes that are grouped together in parish councils, and they don't always work harmoniously. So I understand the desire for some people to have a parish. I'm just not sure this gives me a clear direction as to where I could reasonably go.
Okay, Councillor Barnett.
I mean, one of the things that struck me with the 60-40 split you mentioned, but pretty much all of those who have put in comments in favour haven't addressed the expanded boundaries at all. They're just saying we want a Caldicott Parish Council. Whereas everyone that's against it is not objecting to having a Caldicott Parish Council, they're objecting to expanded boundaries. So what, were we to agree to a parish council, do we have to do it on their proposal of the expanded boundaries, or we just leave it as on the original boundaries? Because I mean, the expanded boundaries is only about, was it 9 houses? Does it really make that much difference?
Yes, it does, unfortunately, because then for a parish council to exist, it needs to have a certain size, and it only reaches that size by putting those properties in. I think, to be fair to those organising the petition, that's not their only thing. That they say, well, if you look at the map, that looks a bit more Caldicott-y than it does parts of that, and that's an entirely subjective matter. People will have at least one view. And so that's the reason why they've identified that, because in discussion they had previously, you've said you will be able to do it, you will qualify just by what is currently Caldicott.
Okay.
It's not being, it's not like people.
Councillor Martin Watson.
And just to be pedantic, Chair, sorry, apologies, because Councillor Stewart's made I think 2% makes all the difference. It's actually 62-38%. It's not 6.
That maybe I'm going to comment on that. It's not a referendum. But it's a, again, it's, if you look back at some of our results or other elections, 62-38 is a relative slam dunk to use the phrase. But again, that's a subjective point in terms of is that enough to change what is a big decision in this area. The issue with deferring, I think it would be useful to give some hope to those that wanted a parish council to know what the events are, what the further information is, because we could rerun this and rerun it, and people are not. I'd be surprised if there was a sudden change back the other way. It's we've been out and 2/3 people, if we're rounding up, 2/3 said yes and 1/3 said no, which is not undemonstrative.
I've got Councillor Simmons and then Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Chair. I'm a bit like Councillor Simpson. I'm a bit confused by the next steps to be identified in the review, or because of the review, or what. But to my mind, if the boundary to become a parish council requires them to have the 9 houses in it, that the 9 houses don't want to be in Caldicott, then the point is moot. The barrier, the level to which they can make this choice has failed. And actually, there's a lot of conversation about this, that, or the other, but actually, it's been tested. It's failed to meet the level to which it can be considered. So why are we wasting any more time?
Well, that was going to be my point, to be fair. Because when you said, the chief exec said, did you not, that the people that have organised the petition said they look a little bit more Caldicotty than Hartshill. Well, I've always put it under the impression that parishes have boundaries, and therefore, and those parish boundaries are set. So you can't just say, well, they look a little bit more Caldicotty than Hartshill, can you?
Which is why I'm pleased that I didn't say it.
No, that's what I mean.
I think what they're saying, again, is, you know, there are some parts of North Nottinghamshire that would say they look more towards Yorkshire, or parts of Derbyshire that look towards Yorkshire, for obvious reasons. Notwithstanding, and I suppose it's, by extrapolating it, it's a bit sort of, we might be in a single unitary Warwickshire, but we wouldn't necessarily feel particular allegiance to the other part of the Warwickshire that we don't want to join up with. It is the argument, but no, you know, you can cut this either way in terms of it's either those 9 properties, or it's the people involved, or it's something else. There's no, and in terms of the next steps, I mean, the review is the whole process until you've decided what you want to do. So we are under the review, and so the next steps in that review are, we've done this consultation. What does the council want to do? We can do something otherwise. And I appreciate it's not clear cut. That's
This seems an opportune moment to bring in Councillor Bell, who is one of the members.
I'll just reiterate what Councillor Simmons said. Those 9 people are really important, and I think it's important to take their view. What might help the people of Caldicot, because it would be good for them to have a parish council, because as their councillor, it's difficult for me to deal with them because they don't have a parish council. I have to organise residents' meetings. It's another thing. But so Fives Court, there is a planning application in at the moment. Fives Court is part of Caldicot, to develop on that land. Now, I think it's a bit unrealistic, the one that's in at the moment, but that doesn't mean to say there might not be a realistic one come in that will be at least 9 houses. I don't know. You know, it's a big piece of land, so it's not beyond the realms of possibility that they may get big enough on their own. And I'm just wondering whether we could just wait and see what happens at Fives Court, until when a decision's made.
That's all of these are entirely appropriate, as would further work or further consultation with the 9 properties to understand and do it. We're well within timescale. On the original timescale, we weren't due to report the results of the consultation in November, so we're a cycle ahead, and so yeah, that would be fine. I'd have to take some advice as to how long you can, you know, go on before you've not responded within 12 months. But I think we are responding in 12 months. It's not that we're just sitting here doing nothing; it's actively considering it. So yeah, any of those are valid.
Councillor Simpson.
I'd just like to understand, because I don't. Is this a question of the number of properties, the number of electors?
It's electors, I understand.
So how short are they? 9. And given the government has announced they're going to change the electoral qualification, including 16 and 17, will that make a difference? Because I'm genuinely, the idea of making a decision based upon a speculative planning application sounds pretty well dodgy to me. I'm waiting. Even, you know, so will 16, 17-year-olds get over the shop?
So I believe it's electors. Forgive me, this was written by a previous elections manager in area of expertise that I don't have, but I think it's electors, and there'll be enough in the 9 properties, the 19 electors in the 9 properties, to make them go from under to enough.
Well, Chair, it does strike me that the answer there is just understanding how many new electors may be created from the proposed changes to the electoral roll. And if that ticks the box, I thought the answer is straightforward.
Yeah, that's also a valid reason to step up.
And that then doesn't push the other 9 people who clearly don't want to be part of it into it.
I think that's important.
Councillor Ridley.
A little bit like Groundhog Day, isn't it? Because we did this, didn't we? A little while ago, we had our review of our electoral boundaries and whatnot. We did all this about how many borough councillors there were going to be for a certain thing. So it does feel a little bit like we've been here before. But I think it's important that the 9 people feel, because there was that discussion amongst parishes about, well, we'll take a little bit of slice of this parish, put it onto this parish, that'll give so many more electorate, and then we can have 2 councillors here and 1 councillor. So, I think people get very, because there were people that were quite passionate about belonging to one parish or another, very much so. In fact, we've got a person, hello Paul, good evening, who's actually in one parish and still identifies with Dordon. So, you never know. But yeah, I get it, and it's very important to people. It sometimes seems a bit dry, but it is a really important topic, and the more we can look at it and try and accommodate people that really do want a parish, the better.
Thank you.
Can I suggest an alternative motion then or a recommendation to B, which is that the outcome of the current planning application for housing in Collingwood and the change to reduce the age to 16 be further considered.
Yeah, seems sensible. Okay.
I know you mean that as a topic.
So with that change, I'll move the recommendation from the chair, seconded by Councillor Simpson. All those in favour? Thank you. Item number 9 is housing in multiple occupation planning policy. So as the report sets out, officers and members have been reviewing the prevalence and impact of houses in multiple occupation within North Warwickshire. Whilst the borough has a relatively small number, residents have raised some concerns in certain areas about recent increases. So whilst the council will not wish to ban HMOs, as part of the reform, important part of housing supply, but it can be a measure of control to ensure this does not get out of balance, impact on the character of our communities within the borough. So members are asked, therefore, whether we wish to consider if an Article 4 direction should be adopted. Councillor Martin Watson.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And just to put a little bit more, as you quite rightly say, because we have a conversation, this is not about demonising HMOs, because HMOs are used quite positively for workers and those types of things. But this was really about, because we know how many 9 and aboves we've got, or 6 and above, should I say, we've got, but we have no idea how many of 6 and below, i.e. 6 individual residents and below. And this was really just about saying, but if people want to do HMOs, can they just bring it to us so we can have a conversation about it and actually consider it appropriately. A point on the report, good report, and I'm very much in favour of an Article 4. Can I have it by the next planning board? Please.
Give it a go.
Is that yes?
Planning board.
6.
Well, I'm not saying yes, it hasn't been approved yet. Just whispering it by that. But yeah, if your wishes for a further report for.
Okay.
So
We're about prejudging of obviously the recommendation. Should it be approved? Thank you.
Well, we can add that to the recommendation, could we not?
yes,
If
just checking the minutes from the.
Councillor Stewart.
Thank you, Chair. The only concern I'd have with that is that in the report, it does detail that an equality impact assessment is not yet been carried out. The matter of HMOs has been detailed, and you're quite right to raise is that, as it states in the report, HMOs in themselves are not negative. For those of us, who hold regular surgeries, will know that matters relating to housing shortage, emergency housing, particularly, are commonplace. Particularly issues in relation to family breakdown, even on occasion domestic violence, and to have access to more readily available housing stock, be that our own or from private accommodation, is there. And by their very nature, HMOs have a more fluid, shall we say, turnover of individuals within them. That's not to say that HMOs are the most suitable places for some of these cases, but sometimes they're the best that we would have on offer. I know from within my own ward, there are concerns when houses are overly developed and the rumour goes around straight away that they are for HMOs. And at that present time, we don't have the ability to question if it's going to be below a certain level. One thing that I think that people do feel right now is a lack of agency in the decision-making process. And therefore, an Article 4 would allow for any such situations for people to have their say. And I think that that's important. However, I am uneasy in the present situation that the use of HMOs in itself is demonised as opposed to what planning should concern is about appropriate usage and appropriate to there. We still have the same situations as we would with any other planning concern in relation to the impact of high numbers of people on our existing infrastructure, which is always an issue that we have with any housing development, and this would be no different. But I feel a little bit uncomfortable, therefore, about rushing through anything without a proper equalities impact assessment as to what the impact of this unforeseen may be. And I think that we would be, I'm not sure what the word, but I don't think we'd be doing our duty to its fullest extent if we didn't consider all the options in relation to any outcomes from that.
Just in terms of rushing, if we get my conditions in a row here, so if the planning board decided that they would like to do an Article 4 direction, that would have to be consulted on. Various owners of high boats would need to be notified, so there would be a consultation. It would be that's the process. It wouldn't come in there, and so therefore a bit like cost review, you would then a future planning board consider those consultations and either confirm your opinion.
Councillor Simmons.
Through you, Chair, just as a question in relation to that comment, does that mean people who've got applications in currently to for HMOs, or people who are considering the development of HMO now? Because if people have got one, it's not a retrospective condition, is it?
No, through you, Chair, no, but I suppose we're trying to get into the industry, and therefore people may have comments on it in terms of how that would impact on others. But you're right, in terms of it would directly impact them, it's not retrospective. But you would need to consult with a number of parties, and that was just one example.
Councillor Ridley.
Thank you, Chair. It came to the planning board a couple of months ago in relation to HMO in Longstreet. The Don Parish neighbourhood plan effectively had got great concerns, and there was a policy in relation to parking when allocating new planning permissions along Longstreet and New Street. And as a result of that, there was a pushback from 9 to 6. It was agreed that the 6 bedroom HMO. We have a large number of HMOs in Dordon, primarily because we have Birch Coppice, Endurance Park, Core 42. So consequently, it attracts an awful lot of workers that require sort of like 1 bedroom rooms. And that's okay, and that over the years that's been managed. But I have been concerned. I have to say I've done a lot of door knocking in Longstreet and certain parts of Dorton over the past 3 years, and it is noticeable when you look at the voters register that there are an awful lot of people that don't appear on it, aren't engaged with it. We don't see them within our community events. And it has changed. Some of the oldies in Dordon say to me that it's certainly changed its character in relation to we've lost a lot of our residents that were there, our families, and it's gone into sort of single occupancy individuals who don't participate within our community. We don't know who they are. We don't know how we can engage with them. So that, as a community, as a community, is concerning. It is concerning. And while you do need various places of accommodation for all sorts of people that've got all sorts of housing needs. You know, I completely get it. I am worried that eventually Long Street, New Street, and all the way around will become multiple rooms with people that have no connection whatsoever to their community or to their own households. In fact, that planning application that came through, the applicant actually said we are providing good quality, affordable rooms. And I asked what was affordable, and it was £900 to £1,200 per calendar month. Is that affordable? Are we providing affordable accommodation with these single rooms that we're planning? So yeah, I am anxious that we do look at this very much so. Personally, from a selfish point of being the borough councillor within Dorking and protecting our communities, providing good quality accommodation, but also being mindful that we don't just let it happen and that it affects my community, going forward. So, thank you.
Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, Chair. To my mind, what Article 4 direction will be doing in this case, and delighted to be told I'm wrong if I've misunderstood, is to an extent to amend the permitted development rights that apply to properties. I'm not entirely sure about where the equalities impact assessment might lead us in that, because all it's saying in reality is you just need planning consent, and we will consider as part of the planning consent what the equalities impact will be at that time. If you like, I'm sort of taking it the other way about. At the minute, there is no equalities impact assessment because people have the right to create a HMO up to a certain size with no consideration of the impact on anybody. Given the need to apply for consent, you actually build in greater consultation and greater opportunity for people to have a say, some of which may be the impact on different equalities. But notwithstanding what I think the report is saying is, before we decide to have an Article 4, then we will need to have an equalities impact assessment. So I think, if I've understood it, it's only going to have one anyway. And I think that's important. But I think at the minute it's slightly not even-handed in that people can do this without considering necessarily all the things that normally happen when people do consider a planning thing. So I think it's making it a little bit more democratic and giving us the opportunity to consider the impact on the neighbourhood, on neighbours, and all of the other things that we talked about. And I think it is important that we consider the issue fairly and reasonably, and as the guidance from government says, it should be based on robust evidence. And I would hope that that is entirely what we'll do. But I think with all these things, you can think too long about it. So I think it coming to the next board, and even if it is simply that the next board is setting out the time frame for delivery of this request, then I think that's entirely reasonable. I'd like to see this considered and decided sooner rather than later. And that will inevitably include the impact on different equalities.
Well, I was in a similar understanding to you, Councillor Simpson. As you're well aware, I am not a planner by any stretch of the imagination. I was under the impression, basically, if the board was to agree that an Article 4 direction is adopted, then that's the policy of the council. I'm not, and no doubt the chief exec will come in. I don't understand why we have to consult with anybody if it's the will of the council for us to apply an Article 4 direction. executive tells the planning board tells, executive board tells the council that's what we're doing. And then from tonight, if it's passed, then an Article 4 direction is used, and therefore anybody who wants HMO has to come to the count. Full stop. Is that too simplistic, Chief Exec?
Not simplistic, it's just not what the regulations say. So the regulations say that we need to consult for a certain period of time
With who?
on the proposal to, consult generally. Normal consultation steps.
Councillor Simmons.
In terms of this consultation then, you talked about consulting people in the industry, people who've got HMOs, but presumably the ones we know are already above the 6 threshold, not below, because we don't know who's got the ones that are below. So who are we consulting with and how do we determine who they are?
So we'll do a normal consult, we'll do everything that we think appropriate to bring it to the attention of the population, of residents and those involved in the area. So I don't know whether there's a HIMO association or a national federation or whatever, but we'll try to publicise the fact that the council is considering whether to do an Article 4 direction. But perhaps that wasn't the best example I gave, but I think if you let it be known in the industry of people who have got HIMOs, and I appreciate these are sometimes individuals, but sometimes these are companies, you can argue that you've done everything you possibly can to bring it to their attention. You won't be doing it. We will raise it with the normal consultation issues, whether the website will publicise it and write to neighbouring council, I don't know, whatever. That's one of the things we can decide at the planning board, but we do have to have a consultation.
Well, playing devil's advocate, if we adopt the line I outlined a couple of minutes ago and just said that's our policy now, and we didn't consult, what would happen? So because it seems a bit weighted against local authorities, in my opinion, because if you're going to consult people that have got HMOs or the HMO society, whatever you want to call them, I would put money on the fact that they come back and say, no, we don't want an Article 4 direction, which, well, tough luck. But so what's if we can almost guarantee what the answer is going to be, why should we bother consulting? And what will happen? What are the consequences to the local authority if we don't consult and we just say from 8 o'clock on the 16th of September, we've now adopted an Article 4 direction. Councillor Simpson, am I being too simplistic? I'm an accountant.
Not necessarily, but I look at it in a slightly different.
Oh.
And I'm somebody who is in favour of doing. I just think we need to do it correctly, quickly. I'm not sure the great advantage in talking to people who've got a consent, because they've already got what they want. The issue to me is the opportunity to talk to people who are considering that. And the reason why I think we need to consult, and not necessarily why I think we should consult, is you could take the view that I do, which is consent without the needful planning application is a right that has been given to the electorate by Parliament. And what we're seeking to do is to change that right. I don't think it's unreasonable to have an element of concentration on that. If we change any of our policies within the borough plan, then we would consult. Now, the government is entirely different. They bring out a new version of the NPPF and there's no consult. Well, there is, but it's a full consultation. But they then make their mind up. We've been in the same position. I think we've got a good record in terms of we have consulted on a range of issues, more than we need to in some cases. And I'm not afraid of consulting. I don't think it's a bad thing to do. And sometimes, consultation gives improvements to the proposal as well as not. And I think it's inevitable that the industry in favour of generating fees from consulting people on HMOs will be probably unlikely to support it. But equally, I could see the opposite, that industry will generate more fees if we have an Article 4 direction, because they will be advising people how to get consent, whereas currently they do not have the need for that. We already have that consent. So, you know, I mean, I know this is a lot of words, but as a principle, I'm in favour of consultation. I don't think it's harmful, so long as it's done at pace.
Okay, councillor Martin Watson, councillor Barnett, councillor Reary, and councillor Dan.
So those that are on the planning board, well, no, actually, councillor Simpson and I are not necessarily quite aligned on. Because I thought the permit development rights as is was part of our local plan. The policy was set.
No,
That's
it's
part of that. So what we're asking to do, and this is where I don't mind consulting, but I say my concern is things take too long. And actually going out and asking lots of questions, then you come back, then you answer questions, then whereas my understanding from Mr. Brown, who is our head of planning, or was our head of planning, or still is our head of planning, was that actually this is in the council's gift. You know, it is in our gift to put out an Article 4 that removes that element of the permit development rights of the 6 HMOs. And as Councillor Stewart said, you know, this is not about demonising HMOs. They have a really positive use. It's just about understanding the scale and actually doing it properly. Because what we don't know at this stage is how many HMOs of 6 and below are actually not done particularly well or not done properly, or people are being put in those sorts of locations that are not particularly positive, not conducive to their environment, etc. So this is just putting a level of control around these types of application for me, and asking the right questions and going, okay, can we consider this? Are there parking issues? Are there kind of, sustainability issues? Are there bus routes? Are there so and so? All those kind of things that we take as consideration as a planning application that we do with a HMO of 6 and below. That's still quite a lot of people, you know, that could impact on the local residents, the local communities, and all those things. So absolutely, it's not about demonising. My worry with consulting is, one, who do you consult with? And actually, how long is it going to take?
Okay, councillor Barnett.
I think most of my concerns relate to, so in paragraph 2.6, where it's got the extract from the National Planning Policy, I think it was mentioned earlier, but it says the use of Article 4 directions should in all cases be based on robust evidence and apply to the smallest geographical area possible. I mean, firstly, I'm not sure applying it to the whole borough is applying to the smallest geographical area possible. So I think that probably opens us up to challenge. But I think if we were going to go down this, and I mean, coming back to Councillor Ridley's points earlier, I think there probably are areas of concern in the borough, Dorton may be one of them, that actually we would be much better off trying to identify those areas of concern and actually consulting those areas. And we wouldn't just be consulting with developers, but consulting with the local residents as well to get their opinion. And I think that we would actually have a case, and we would actually have some evidence. I think at the moment, what evidence we've got is anecdotal, and it's certainly not what I would describe as robust.
Okay, councillor Ryrie.
Thanks. I mean, I'll probably vote for this tonight, but my concern is that we shouldn't be producing policy that creates unnecessary fear and anxiety to residents. So I'd be interested to know sort of how many residents have raised concerns, you know, which areas are those residents for, you know, to take on Councillor Barnett's point. Have you received any expressions of interest on the large scale from sort of private properties to convert to HMOs? In the review, I'd like to see projected costs to the council, so including planning, legal, potential appeal processes, what assessment of resources would be required. Are we able to meet those in the house? We hear often about how stretched the planning department is. So I'd like to see a really robust review on this so that we can, you know, make that case to our residents that we're doing this for the right reasons and that the council can actually process these planning applications.
Councillor Bell.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. I was going to say, I think you've already said it. We don't just consult with people who are potential HMO owners or to but what the residents think. That's really important, and I really need to do that, and I'd like to know how long the consultation needs to be. But on permitted development rights, I'm a bit confused because I know that in some planning applications, in the conditions, we take away further permitted development rights. So we've obviously got that power to do it. So we can do it. And we don't consult on that, we just do it. But I mean, obviously we have to have reasons, but we just do it. So, I would do it for the whole borough because we don't know. The fact is that we do not know where these smaller HMOs are, and we sort of get to know about them because they've happened. I mean, I've got quite a few actually in Hartsfield I didn't even know about, and now I do know, and it is starting to cause pressure on the communities around them now, and we haven't got any control over that at the moment at all. So it's difficult to predict where we're going to need it because it could happen anywhere.
Councillor Simpson.
I understand Councillor Bell's confusion. We don't impose conditions on anybody. They have to be discussed with the applicant. So the consultation in that sense is with the applicant, who will have permitted development rights really just part of that decision. I equally understand what Councillor Bartlett's saying, but my take on it is absolutely the opposite, because I'm not trying, to my mind, the smallest geographical area possible has to be the whole borough, because we're not saying there's a problem that is known here or there or anywhere. It's trying to understand what the problem may be to assess the issues in advance, and the only way we do that is by having a planning application to consider it. If we were looking at only doing bits of the borough, how would we know? I think the only logical way is the whole borough, because what we're saying is we're not saying you cannot have, you will not have, we will not grant consent. We're saying you need to apply for consent. And I don't think practically we could do it on a smaller area than the whole world, because the process of determining application then looks at the individual circumstances for which consent is being sought. So I genuinely understand what you're saying, Councillor Bartlett. I just think I see it the other way about. That if we were to try and identify specific areas, then that would still leave the risk of all the problems that are identified in the report happening elsewhere. So I honestly think 100% is practically the smallest possible area.
I would agree with you, Councillor Simpson. It's a sort of all or nothing, isn't it? Because if you start, identifying certain areas of the borough, then it becomes overcomplicated, not just for us, but also for the potential applicants and residents. So, Councillor Steve Watts.
Thanks, Chairman. I'm thinking about if we decided there was a point in the sand and we said, okay, this is the day, whether it's tonight, in a month's time, or whenever that is, then unless we retrospectively demand people declare, we're going to have a large number of HMOs that will say, oh, well, this was set up before that date. We'll have no proof otherwise. So we'd have to somehow request that all the HMOs declare, but we would have to, I'm not quite sure of the way that it'd be done or anything like that. But there is a risk of these HMOs and this going underground and people just saying, oh, it's been 8 years or months, or, so some of these aren't buildings that are separate power and things like that. Some of these are no more than bedrooms with padlocks on, shared kitchen and things like that. Some of these aren't obvious, it's a single house number, it's a single postal address. People aren't aware that there's multiple occupancies in these. So it could very easily go under the radar unless we actually somehow try and get that back in again. And that's not an answer, just something I wanted to just share, really, Chairs, to one of the challenges, I guess.
General, that's planning. That happens on everything, building houses, building factories, change. It's always, and there is a recognised procedure for people to say, that development took place X years ago. as to determine whether or not they have the benefit plan permission, because I can't remember the exact phrase, but the chief executive, I'm sure, will remember. Being a lawyer. But there is a process for people saying, you know, I've done this for, I think it's 6 years. So that's already dealt with by law.
Certificate of lawful use.
Oh, there you see, I am reassured.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, councillor Jackson and then the.
Thank you, yeah, I'm hoping I make a sense by what I'm saying is, but being one of the areas that have had quite a lot of scaremongering and lots of different like residents meeting and phoning up and asking what's going on. By having a policy like this, should then remove the scaremongering, and because we had one where people were saying, oh, that's a HMO, it's full of immigrants and everything. And the house had the windows all smashed in. And it was just a family living there with children in there. So you can imagine how terrified they were. So I'm just looking at the benefits of this and thinking that hopefully that would then remove the, you know, the speculation and say, well, actually, here's what HMOs we have got in the area, and then like this is what's going on. And if it is then that we ask all those that have already got HMOs just to declare them, even if it is just a couple of residents, at least then we can say to residents in our areas, well, this is how many we've got, and you know, it's not what you're thinking. I don't know. It was just a comment to make. But
Thank you.
Chair, can I suggest then that paragraph, recommendation B is changed to that the council should, at the October Planning and Development Board, consider whether an Article 4, and that report includes the options in respect of consultation and the options in respect of how soon an Article 4 direction can come in. And the only thing I would say, and I won't go too far down this road, is that obviously planning applications, if a planning application came in tomorrow for a house in multiple occupation, it wouldn't necessarily be determined straight away. So there is some time for that. But yes, it would be for people to prove that they were already harmers, because then there's no change of use after the direction came in. The only other point on conditions is, of course, that's appealable by the applicant, and it's just a different process. The regulations say that we have to consult on a general Article 4 direction. The regulations say we can put conditions on, but that gives them a right of appeal if they want to implement the commission without that position coming into effect.
Okay, I've got councillor Martin Watson.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And just picking up on that, just cracks out to the recommendations as well, is the point that's been made about trying to work out what we don't know already. So how many HMOs of 6 and below have we actually got, and where are they? Not quite sure how, and then we're obviously going to go out and ask people to self-declare, but at least some will self-declare. So we'll at least be better off than we are today.
Yeah.
From a knowledge.
Right now, that's the recommendation. Can you take my assurance that we will do that in the report? Because I can't quite work out
Of course, Chief.
on the hoof how to fit that in. But yes, we'll. So I'm looking at a draft report anyway, and it's got. It's
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just to clarify what I think the chief executive is saying. If a planning application tomorrow, we're due on the policies that are there here now. The issue isn't if a planning application comes in tomorrow. It's for those properties that do not need. So there'd be no change for those that are.
That's right. Yeah. That's the position we are with all policy change, that there is a lag. Yeah.
Okay, so with that change, I'll move the recommendation from the chair, seconded by councillor Simpson. All those in favour? Are there any abstentions? There is one. Thank you. Item number 10 is the exclusion of the public inquest. Consider whether, in accordance with section 100A brackets 4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the public inquest be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business. on the grounds that they involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined by Schedule 12A to the applicant. All those in favour? You.